Hi there, welcome back. So in this lecture we're going to be learning about the conditional or the if statements of Python. But before we indulge ourselves into learning the conditionals, we need to refresh our memory and take a look back into the comparison operators that we have learned on our previous lecture. So this is what we need to get started with the conditional statements. To equal, is equal, exclamatory equal, is not equal, greater than, less than, greater or equal, less or equal. So that's all the comparison operators we need to get started with the conditional statements of Python. So I'm just gonna remove that, and I hope that you can remember all of these comparison operator. Should you encounter any difficulties, then I would highly recommend that you go back to the lecture where I have taught you these comparison operators. Okay, so jumping into my IDE, and I'm gonna create three variables: a equals 10, b equals 11, and c equals 13. Okay, so now I'm gonna type if, and I'm gonna set my condition a is greater than b, and I'm gonna close it with a colon. Now I'm gonna hit enter and call my print function, get inside the parentheses and add single quote. I'm gonna type this is not true. Okay, so before I do anything else, I would like to explain something that is very important, which is this blank space just before our print function. It is called indentation, and it is very important in Python. If you miss indentation, then you're gonna have an error and your program won't run. So watch what happens if I change my indentation from being there to here. Now if I right click, run it, then you'll see that I've got an error, and it says indentation error, expected an indented block. So now if I simply hit tab, right click, run it, then you'll see that we no longer have that error because we have the required indentation. So now I just wanted to explain this thing right off the bat so that you know that indentation in Python is very important. Okay, if you're coming to Python from, let's say, Java or PHP, then it does not really matter in those languages, but in Python indentation is very important. So now I'm gonna hit enter, and I'm gonna simply hold down my shift and hit on tab, and as you can see that my cursor went back to the very edge of my IDE, and now I'm gonna type else, end it with a colon, hit enter, call my print function, get inside the parentheses, add single quote, and I'm gonna type let's print this. Right click and run it, then you'll see that we've got let's print this printed out on our code runner. Why? Because this condition that we set is not true, and that is the sole reason why our print statement is not available on our code runner. So what happened is that else is kind of a default value, so if nothing works, then whatever we have on the else block will be printed out, will be executed, and this is exactly what happened in this case. Our else block has been printed out on our code runner. So this is how you use if and else statement together. So there is something else that we can implement to check another condition, to check a second condition, which is called elif. Let me show you what I mean by saying that. In order to implement elif, we have to exit out of this if block. We have to hold down our shift and hit tab, and now I'm gonna type elif. And what is elif? It is the short form of else if, and this else if statement is available on all of the programming languages that are out there. They may look slightly different, For an example, in PHP we type else if. Okay, so it is the same, it's just that it is the short form in Python. Elif, let's set another condition. A is greater or equal than C. Close it with a colon, hit enter, call your print function, get inside the parentheses, add single quote, and type this is also not true, and right click and run it. Then you'll see that our program fall back to the else block because A is not greater nor equal to C, because C has a larger value than our variable A, right? So we can use elif. So let's see how we can implement that. So I'm going to type again elif C is equal to B, print, get inside the parentheses, add single quote, type is it possible, just writing some random string values. So now if I right click and run it, then you'll see that this is also not a possibility, and that is the reason why we don't have this string value on our code runner. Why? Well, it is because C is not equal to B, because they have different values, right? So as you can see that we were being able to test another condition with the help of elif block. So now we can repeat the process and type elif. So now we're gonna test another condition. So elif B is less or equal to A, then what? Then print, get inside the parentheses, add single quote, and I'm gonna simply type is that right? Now right click, run it. As you can see that this is also not right, and that is the reason why we don't have this value on our code runner. So that's how you implement if, elif, and else block in order to set and test condition. So the way this program works is that condition must met in order for the remaining logic to be available on our code runner. Once it will execute the very next command and it will stop right there. For an example, let me change my values for the variable B. Let's change it from being 11 to 9. So now A is greater than B because A has a value 10 and B has a value 9, right? So now watch what happens if I right click and run it. As you can see that we've got is not true printed out on our code runner. Let's change this from being not true to true because now it is true. So let's run it. So this is true, and the remaining block is not being printed anymore. So what happened is that the condition met and our program printed out this string value, and it did not bother looking into the remaining conditions that we have set down below, and this is the default behavior of if statement. So that's pretty much how the if, elif, and else block work in Python. You can set condition and you can test multiple condition with the help of elif, and then you can implement the else part to print out some default values. So that's pretty much it about the part 1 of the conditional statement of Python. I hope this has been informative and you have learned some valuable lesson. I'll see you in the next lecture.